Welcome to this week's edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly, coming up in this week's episode. Here we have a line of all my Cala species that are growing for comparison side by side, which is great to see the differences in growth. But at one end we have this palm called the Trachycarpus comune, or Trachycarpus tachyle comune, which is not a true tachyle, but it's a Trachycarpus palm grown in the Comune region. And it's all well and good having this palm here, but since the jungle hut was built, the overhang is a little larger than first intended, so eventually this palm will just hit the side of the jungle hut. So what I'm going to do now is to dig up this palm and transplant it to a different part of the garden where it'll be free to grow as wide and as tall as it likes. Now I've dug up the palm, got a decent sized root ball compared to the size of the palm, but a couple of things to note on this. First of all, the soil is extremely powder dry all the way down the roots here. It's been so dry for weeks now, had hardly any rain at all. I think the last rain we had was about 3 weeks ago for a couple of hours. And also the other thing to note is the base of the palm. There's a few roots between the base and the soil, but there's a bit of a gap, so it's not been growing as well as it could have done. So I'm going to bury it a bit deeper in its new planting hole and give this a real good soak and a mulch of compost to get it established. So I've got my planting hole here, I'm going to give it a real good soak of water, make it nice and wet on every side. Really get that nice and wet in there. That's good enough. Then I'll get the palm and I'm doing that a little bit lower than the soil because it's raised between the roots and its original soil level, so that should be fine when I backfill it. But before I backfill it, I'm going to put some more water in and give this a real soaking. It's good enough there. I'll backfill that. This is really good compost and soil mixed in with manure. Just backfill that. Then just heel that in, make sure it's straight. Then I'll give it some more water. And then The only thing left to do now is to put the label in. That's the Trachycarpus Tachial Cmone palm planted. I'll put a bit of compost around the top just to give it a bit of a mulch, but that should look really good in a few years' time, because it will be the first thing you see as you come into the garden, the newly planted bamboo on the other side, and then this winding path going down to the jungle hut before the second half of the exotic garden starts. Now this Cmone palm is a fantastic addition to the Trachycarpus family. It's got the really strong deep green leaves like the Trachycarpus wagenarius, which doesn't need loads of feed to keep it going green. And it's also got these really long, strong leaflets on each leaf. And I think it's going to be a very big palm. It's already quite wide compared to the size of the trunk, so it should cover this area really well. And I think it should be grown more often than it is. Very similar obviously to the Fortunei, but just got that deeper green colour and really strong leaves. Now these are seeds of palm, the hardy parlour palm, Camadoria radicalis. They're bright orange when ripe, and I'm going to sow these so we can have lots more of these wonderful hardy parlour palms. Now before I do that, these are the fruits, so the seeds are inside. I need to remove all the flesh from these to improve germination rates. And now the sap inside this flesh can be an irritant, so I'm going to wear gloves when I remove all this, and then I'm going to wash the seeds, soak them overnight, and then I'm going to sow them in a little seed tray in general purpose compost and perlite, and put it somewhere on a windowsill so it's warm, and keep it moist as well with some cling film over the top of the seed tray. This is the Camadoria radicalis hardy parlour palm in my garden. It's been out for several winters, completely unfazed by the winters. Got one here and a smaller one next to it. Hopefully there's a male and female, so I'll eventually get more berries and seeds from these. So that's what the palm looks like. Now we've had a lot of palms in this episode, so this is something different. Way above my head, about 5 meters into the sky, is this unusual looking plant, and this is Cala Panics, which is the only species in its group, and it has these palmate leaves with a few forms of Cala Panics. They all grow into these large trees, and this is over 5 meters tall at the moment. And what's really interesting about it is the trunk is really spiky, so I'll show you that now. So the trunk of this tree is mainly in the shade, as it's surrounded by this Fargesia bamboo. But as you can see, the most interesting feature about the trunk are these big thorns or spikes run all the way up the trunk. And like I said, it's a tall tree, it's over 5 meters tall, right through there. Can't quite see it through the bamboo, but it's a really interesting tree to grow. It is deciduous, so it does lose its leaves in winter, but in summer it produces a really interesting tree. And if you don't want it to be a tree and have it as a bush, you can cut it down to the height you desire, and it'll shoot out and it'll create more of a bush shape, and it'll look a bit like a tetrapanax. Now into quite late May now, and this large bulbous looking structure is my favourite ginger. This is ginger forrestii, which has produced a huge clump over the years, but you can see it is shooting. So these red shoots are over here, and this huge clump I'm going to divide now, just before it really starts motoring, into several plants. Now gingers don't really like being disturbed, but it's fine to do so. Obviously if you want to reinvigorate the plants and spread them around the garden, that's what you have to do. Or you could grow them from seed, but it's hard to get this plant from seed. I don't think I've ever seen it from seed, this for STI form. So I'm going to divide this into several parts in a future week, probably next week's episode. That's it for another week. Join me next week for a very special edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly, something you won't have seen before on my channel. Join me then.